Hello, this is the BORDERPOL Journal for the 10th of June, 2024. We'll be joined by Bob Dunlop, my co-host, in a few seconds, and we'll be talking about the current events of the week, in particular, Canadian Parliament's angst over foreign interference in elections and foreign interference in the political activities of the Government of Canada.
Oh. Good afternoon.
It is.
Almost good evening for you.
Yes, it's almost good evening in this neck of the woods.
And with any luck, when this is all finished, you can go on and enjoy Miller time somewhere.
Yes, I can somewhere. Well, we seem to have solved the technical problems that beset us.
Yeah, well, it's always one of those things you say the three-fingered salute, Control Alt Delete, reboot, whatever it is, it sure fixes a whole host of problems.
Indeed, indeed. Well, this is episode number 20, season 3 for the 10th of June. We're faced with a whole slew of interesting things we can chat about. Which, I'm really trying very hard to keep my civil tongue in my head, given some of the things that we've seen this past week.
Well, it is one of those things, and the pauses that I do like this are because I'm apparently supposed to have filters, and I'm really trying hard to let the filters kick in because, but it's getting more and more difficult.
Yes, it is. But let's take a look at the state of affairs in Canada with regard to the game that's being played in Parliament at the moment.
What you mean today is different from another day?
Well, just as we were trying to figure out some of the technical glitches to get on the air, I was watching the House of Commons charade of games run today by one Jagmeet Singh, who was waxing eloquently about the release of this list of so-called MPs that are apparently
verging on a state of treason.
Yeah, and he was asking Dominic LeBlanc, which is one of Prime Minister's favorite pals in the House, why he hasn't done that. And the response was, if you're ready for this, LeBlanc says, "I can't tell you that because I spoke to the deputy RCMP commissioner, and if I give out those names, I will be charged criminally."
I'm trying to figure out how that would work.
Well, apparently this is just another way to say, I'm not going to rat out all my Liberal MPs who are up to their necks in this mess. How convenient.
That's a big question on this. If it had been part of Her Majesty's loyal opposition or runner-up parties or nearly do well parties, that this would have been on the high burner, the agenda right at the forefront, and there'd be massive amounts of press on this. And yeah, it makes you wonder just who is on that list, how high up they go, and just to what extent did they, what was the term they used? Willingly gave information to a foreign government?
Or unwittingly were involved with foreign agents.
I don't think it's unwitting. I think it was
not when you get money from the foreign agents. Apparently, some were quite happy to take some support, financial or otherwise, from these so-called foreign agents. But hold on, the same Mr. Singh Jimmy Rolex, as I like to call him, was also waxing eloquently over the fact that he thinks that the leader of the opposition, one Mr. Polyev, was also involved in this, although he has not seen the actual report, but he's heard that that is the case. Of course, he's doing all this dirtying up inside the parliament, where there is no such thing as I'll see you in court. Okay, so I can lie my ass off in there, but it's okay because, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's unparliamentary language. That's the worst that can happen to you, right?
You know,
It's so frustrating.
well, it is totally frustrating, and I guess
Juvenile.
the fact that we just have lost all faith, all manners of trust in any politician. We found that out here within the last 3 months, when the city of Surrey took the provincial government to court over the fact that they held an election which put in an incumbent mayor to keep the RCMP as the police of jurisdiction, but the provincial government said, no, we know what's better for you. So you're going to have a local municipal police force. And apparently, I haven't seen any court transcripts, but the thrust of the provincial's lawyers' rebuttal to all this basically was, they're politicians. And just because you listen to them and you vote for them doesn't mean you're going to get it. So I'm kind of thinking that, if our provincial election out here is certainly going to be a lot of fun, because I would like to attend all candidates meeting and say, go ahead, lie your face off, because you've already told us that it's meaningless. We can vote for you, but you're not going to do what you had promised. You're not going to tell us what's going on. You're just the old adage. How do you know a politician is lying?
Lips are moving, but yeah.
Their lips are moving. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is getting to be such a clown show that it's I'm lost for words. The Patty Haidu, who's a Liberal MP from somewhere in Toronto, she attempted to have the Speaker force a Conservative MP to apologize after he used the common metaphor, quote unquote, ammunition, in reference to having a strong argument. Patty Haidu, this airhead, claims that the common expression, having ammunition, is violent language, and wanted that other nincompoop, which is the current Speaker of the Parliament, chastise the MP for using the word ammunition. Now, you can't make this up. This is so stupid that you have people making over $200,000 a year babbling on with such stupidity, and they think that we're going to take these clowns seriously. I mean, come on.
Well, and that's the low end. I would venture to say we're closer to 300,000 on these.
It's just insane. And this past week has just been, there's something very strange going on here. Another church burns down, this time in Toronto, and no one says anything about it, as if it's no big deal. Church burning in Canada is like what, some sort of game, and no one seems to have any idea how it happened or whatever. Just the church. This is an old, established, a beautiful old building in Toronto, and boom, it gets burned down, and nothing gets done about it. Oh, I guess the fire marshal will investigate at some point, but it's like again, if it wasn't if it was a mosque or a synagogue, heaven forbid, imagine the outrage.
Yeah, well, we've had that out here where we have had mosques, well, not burnt, but protested and rocks thrown at it. Certainly a lot different from ammunition. But we've also had it at the synagogues as well, where part and parcel of what Vancouver City Police Department has to do now is sit outside these houses of worship to make sure, well, we don't have enough police to start with to cover every church. So where are we going? As a society, we're lost, I think.
Totally.
It goes back to that video link that I sent you last week that we talked about with the triads and how politicians
Yes.
perceive lad handling and blah blah blah.
Yes. Gary Clement's book. Yes.
And the reality is that what they said is true. As a society, unless we start putting the brakes on and turning things around, and I guess it's going to even show in Europe, where heaven forbid we have right-wing parties being elected. Right? And in Europe, you know what that means? They're gonna take steps to shut down borders, clamp down on this and clamp down on, and guess where they're gonna come, folks?
Well, I don't know if they will or not, but it's certainly a turning point. I think that the ultra open borders policies of the developed Western world seems to be collapsing as folks in various parts of Europe have decided they've had just about enough of this nonsense. I mean, look at in France, basically Macron pulled the pin on the weekend, says, "Are you going to call an election?" Because he was thoroughly spanked at the European parliamentary elections on Sunday. Okay, I mean, he's cooked. His days are done as a the Napoleonic figure that he thought he was. He's gone. And a great deal of that has to do with his warmongering vis-a-vis Ukraine, and more importantly, I think the people of France have had enough of him selling out French culture, the French identity, that whole business of what is France, and so the opposition parties who are to the right of center, in some cases further to right than you might want. But this is just a reaction to the kind of unserious leadership that has been going on for about 10 years in the G7. We've seen this, and now the reaction is, I don't have a job. It's not safe to be out on the street, and I'm being hassled wherever I go on whatever I want to do. So the average, Joe in France has said enough. Same in Germany. The Chancellor Scholz, he couldn't be elected dog catcher at the moment. So he's another one of these warmongering twits who's been basically shown the door. And so what you got left over there is a lot of people who are really quite beside themselves. And the whole European Union experiment or project is in trouble here because they just didn't know when to stop,
Well,
pushing the envelope.
like we've talked about before, and I've mentioned the pendulum theory, where we swing far to the left and far to the right and far to the left and far to the right. And it seems at times that it looks like it's going to slow down to a happy median somewhere in the middle. But on other times, like the last few years in particular, they have almost built air cannons to keep the left side of the pendulum going and pushing and seeing how far it can go. And I guess that's where it's coming now. You're starting to get the people who are saying enough is enough. Let's just hold on here.
Yeah,
And again,
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just, again, coupled with that, what you had mentioned, that people don't feel safe. And it was on one of the national news, and I don't know which one it was, but they were talking to people on the street, and they're starting to question all these people that are coming in. Why are they 20 to 35-year-old single males? Like, where are, if there's such a refugee problem, where are the families? Where are the women, the children, and I guess that's something that are we being invaded? And in essence, these are all the profile for an army? And are we in fact being invaded? And that sounds pretty terrible, but yeah, maybe
I sense your exasperation with this, and I have the same thing. Because if you just look at the fluff coming out of the heads of these so-called political leaders, and again, I think we're the petri dish where all these experiments have been, experimented with various swabs of woke ideas, are now coming to turn out to be actual viruses that are political viruses that have been. I'm using a lot of metaphors here, that have gotten into the system, and people don't know what to do with it, other than surely we have to start looking at some kind of antidote to this. But look, in Canada, the current government is really on the ropes here, because it can't do anything right. And now it does the kooky things like calling ammunition violent speech. Or remember yesterday, and I sent you this. This was from Brian Lilly, who's a columnist in with Sun Media, or I should say, Post Media, but with writes for the Toronto Sun, where he says his column starts off by saying Freeland, this is the deputy prime minister for those outside of Canada, warns of dark future in Canada without a capital gains tax hike. I mean, in a bizarre speech laying out the government plan on capital gains, Deputy PM Freeland warned citizens of burning with rage. What the heck is she talking about? She says that the democracy is at stake if Canada doesn't raise the capital gains tax rate. Now, what kind of nonsense is this? Are you serious? I mean, this is so bizarre that you can't even get your head around it. And she talks about what kind of Canada you want to live in, and she provides all. I mean, this is just so bizarre.
I can see in one point that it's a microcosm of the world. 99% of the wealth is controlled by 1% of the population.
That's a problem.
That's the way it's been for decades. Trying to tax these people is maybe a noble idea, but the reality is that one of several things will happen. The first being they're going to take all their investments and move it away. There won't be any capital gains to collect. If they're businesses, which some of these entities are, they're going to move because they're not going to want to pay these taxes. That's why we had NAFTA come in. That's why we've offloaded a lot of what we're doing to they used to be called third world countries, but they're far surpassing us in just about everything. So they're cheaper to make than what we are. Yeah. And at what point do we have to sort of sit back and start doing our own navel gazing to say, is the guy that's working on a factory line worth $45.60 an hour?
Look, these crackpots seem to think that they can change the Earth's temperature if you pay more taxes, but they don't know how to deal with homelessness. They don't know how to deal with crime. They don't know how to deal with interest rates. Yet they can change the Earth's temperature through monetary. Come on, this is beyond stupid.
But we still haven't got a full report yet on how much the temperature has dropped here in Canada. But I know it was dropping here this morning because my furnace kicked in here on the 10th of June.
Yeah, well, I'm wearing as you can see, a sweatshirt because it's only 13 degrees. But, I mean, these are the same people who've been talking about a budget that balances itself. It's been 9 years since this clown of a government has been in charge, and they've been taxing the hell out of everybody, but no budget's been able to balance itself yet. Okay, so this is just beyond the pale. These people are like drunken sailors spending money. Actually, it's the difference between a drunken sailor and this bunch is when the drunken sailor goes out and gets drunk, spends all the money, and is done. He has no more money. Okay, when a government goes out as a drunken sailor, they go back to the ATM machine of the taxpayer and get some more money to get even more boozed up. I mean, that's another kind of metaphor, but
Well, it is, but the reality is it's not that far wrong. And we've pointed it out several times on many of our broadcasts that there really is only one person that's in theory, one person, the royal I,
Mhm.
who is paying these taxes. And it's at three levels of government here in Canada, and probably three or four more to our cousins down south, and who knows how many levels of government over in Europe. But when I run out of money, what are you going to do? You know, and it's coming awful close to that.
It is. It is getting very close to that.
But so
But
anyway, once again, we've come to a point of saying we got to find something good.
well, there's very little joy in Mudville in today's broadcast, I'm afraid. And we hadn't even talked about how messed up the stuff is in the U.S. Which, by the way, interesting enough, last week's analytics, I was looking at our broadcasts, and Joe, that 75% of our viewers are in the United States.
No,
Really? Yeah. So we better kind of, or either that, or they're all watching to see how things are turning out rather up north. Because I don't know if you saw, but Whoopi Goldberg said that if Trump gets elected, she's moving to Canada or someplace like that. And I'm wondering if there's enough room for us here to have the Whoopi Goldbergs of the world who are going to escape the U.S. come here. I think we're already full of people like her here, so I'm not sure if there's any room for her. But be
well,
that as it may.
take that with a grain of salt. I think the last time that the former President Trump was elected, there was a lot of people who were saying they were going to move, and they never did. So
Yeah, I know it's all a lot of hooey, but I tell you, things are as goofy down there as it is here. But I'm glad to see that according to the analytics done on our viewership, our American cousins like watching what we have to say about the world up here.
well, and it's maybe it is just interest to see, are we the canary in the coal mine here? And if we go down, they're maybe not too far behind.
You know, uh, that may well be because I mean, let's face it. There's been almost a copycat political drive between the liberals of Trudeau and the Democrats of Biden. They even use the same slogans: "Build back better," and the same approach: "Tax the hell out of people because that'll bring the global temperature down." And it's there are some similarities there, and I've always said that these two juggernauts of intelligence are connected at the hip. So,
Mhm.
and they are running the course. I mean, at the moment, if you look at it from a political perspective, they're both trying to run the table because they are in deep trouble. This bunch up here, for reasons we just spoke about, and the ones down there have run out of steam on a number of planes. And in fact, if you look at their view of the world, which is quickly changing right in front of their eyes. I mean, Macron's gone, Schultz will be gone. This is the old guard of the old woke establishment, and this does not look good for them.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Britain too with their election.
Oh, Bet's Rishi's not prime minister after the election. We should do one of those betting things where you metaphorically put money on a dark horse.
Yeah. Well, who knows what's going to happen? I mean,
No, we don't know what's going to happen.
it all boils down to the fact that whatever happens, the sun's going to rise in the east and set in the west, and not much else is going to change.
No, but next week's show, I think we'll do a little bit more focus on U.S. issues and see what.
It would be interesting. Just as a preview to that, our local newspaper here had a whole page and a half article of issues related to human smuggling on the trains and the parks and everything else coming from Canada down into the United States. because they were finding it was a lot easier to get into Canada and trip into the United States from up here than it is to try and get through the southern border. So we'll have to do some research on that one.
Okay, we'll do, and we'll re-adjourn a week or so from today because
Sounds good.
we're down to the last 30 seconds.
Have a great Miller time.
Yeah, and for those watching, we're always available on Rumble, mostly on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Absolutely. Hit the like button. Send us your comments.
We'll see you next week.
You bet.
Adios.
Adios.